Hi folks, just a quick message before we get started on this episode. It's a bit shorter than the others because unfortunately when it came time to editing the third segment, the audio was garbled and it was just unusable. I've tried to get Malcom back in the show here, but now I'm back to the start of his media schedule. So it's going to be probably another 6 or 8 months before I can get back in there and see him again. So we're a bit short on today's episode, but I promise I'll make it up to you next time. Let's get on with it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben, and in this episode of the Smoking Hot Confessions BBQ Podcast, we're talking to a man who sets the standard for barbecue competitors, podcasters, and YouTubers. Hey family, I hope you're well wherever you are and you got that thin blue smoke rolling. In today's episode of the show, we have the one and only Malcom Reed from Killer Hogs, How to BBQ Right on YouTube, and the How to BBQ Right podcast, and an incredible retail shop as well. But before we get into that, I've just got a few announcements I need to run by you first. The first is we do have our beautiful merch available for you on SmokingHotConfessions.com. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, we got stickers, we got tumblers, we got all sorts of stuff over there. So head on there, check that out. And while you're over there, grab yourself a free copy of our ebook, The Beginner's Guide to Real Barbecue. It was recently awarded by the NBBQA, so you know it's a good read, and everything in there is to take you from zero to hero in the world of backyard barbecue. So have a click around the website, a pop-up window will appear, put your details into that, and we'll shoot it straight out to your inbox for you. And a big welcome to the Smoking Hot Confessions barbecue community today. It's great to have everybody here. It's a group that we have over on Facebook. You can head along, join that. It's family friendly, barbecue only talk, and all the other guff is left at the door. And we'd love to have you there. Everybody's welcome. Now, if you are catching this later on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Over on Facebook, it's all about the likes, the comments, and the shares. Over on Instagram, IGTV, we love the cute little love hearts, the comments, and the follows. And if you're listening in on a podcasting app, do take 2 minutes, give us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps to drive us up the charts, and we have been as high as number 3 for food in Australia and number 6 in America on the Apple Podcast chart. So that is absolutely massive, and that's thanks to those 5-star ratings and reviews. But I think that's probably all the blah, blah, blah you need out of me for this. Let's get Malcom in here.
This is the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast with your host, Ben Arnott. How long's it been since your last confession?
Malcom, welcome to the show, my friend. It is absolutely a privilege to have you here.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Ben. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too, mate. Me too. Now, I always kick things off with the same question, but I'm going to just change it a little bit for you because I know that you barbecue a lot. So what was the last thing that you barbecued just because you wanted to eat it? So not for a video or not for a class or something, like the last barbecue meal for you that you cooked.
Oh, man, it was probably some smoked hot wings. I'm a wing junkie, man. I love them.
We just had some wings the night before last for the grand final of the football. Tell me, how do you like to do yours?
I don't get too complicated with them. I just like to get some good seasoning on them. The one thing I always do before I put them on the grill or smoke or anything is I get all the moisture off of them. So I'll usually put them on a wire rack, stick them on a little baking sheet, and let them set in the refrigerator and kind of air dry. I like to give them like an hour or 2 hours time in there. It takes all that moisture off the skin, and then I come back with a light coat of oil. And you could use vegetable oil, peanut oil, any kind of oil that you want to put butter on the outside of them. You just need some fat. And that helps that skin go ahead and crisp up a little bit. It helps it brown really nice. I layer my seasonings on. Usually I'm using, some of my barbecue rub, but I'll do jerk wings or I'll do some different flavors and things. But most of the time, if I'm smoking them, I'm using barbecue flavors. So I like my hot rub to go on there on top of that oil, and then I'll stick them in some smoke. For me, pecan is awesome on chicken if you can find pecan wood. But, we use hickory here in the Memphis area where I'm at. We use some cherry wood sometimes, but, if you got access to pecan on chicken, give it a try. And then I put some smoke on them, and I take them up till they're, about, everybody says 165 for chicken is where you got to have it. That's a minimum. I like my wings to go up to 185, 190. So that meat's jumping off the bone and I can, I like the whole wings where I can break them in half and just get all that good juicy meat off of it. That's what it's all about.
No doubt, man. That sounds amazing. What temperature do you run your smoker at when you're doing that?
Usually when I'm doing wings, I'm cooking 275 to 300, right in that range. I want to render that fat. You got to get the temps up a little bit to render that chicken fat that's underneath the skin. And so it makes for a better bite in your chicken, and it helps get that skin a little crispy too. You know, people always ask me, how do you get crispy skin on chicken on the grill or smoker? You really don't. It's not like fried. You're never going to get that fried texture, but you can get a nice texture by using that oil and then cranking the temps up a little bit. Some people like to go a little slow and low and slow first, and then crank the temperature up at the end, and that's fine too. But I found 275 to 300 is like and that's Fahrenheit for you guys. I don't know if you guys are Celsius or Fahrenheit. I don't know the conversion, but everything I'm talking about is Fahrenheit. So 275 to 300.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. We do cook using both here in Australia because most of us learnt from watching your barbecue channel and Barbecue Pit Boys, and so all the learning material is taught in Fahrenheit. So most of us speak both Fahrenheit and Celsius. So, and there's actually a huge online debate as to whether the food tastes better if you cook it in Celsius or Fahrenheit, but we won't get into that here. So I'd imagine that you have access to a huge range of different smokers. What's your favorite one?
Favorite one, I'm loving cooking on a stick burner now because it's more of about building that fire and controlling those temperatures and getting the airflow right and having to sit with it and add sticks. If I had to pick one right now, I'm probably going to say my stick burner. But if you've heard any of the stuff I've talked about before, I have one that's an old hickory pit, and it's it's not a stick burner pit. It's like an upright with different shelves, and it's my moneymaker pit. If anything ever happened, I know I can fill that thing up and start me up a barbecue stand or a food truck, and I could feed my family, keep the lights on with that pit. So that's always probably, in the back of my mind, that's number one, but fun to cook on. You can't beat a stick burner.
Yeah, it's nice to have that engagement with the process, isn't it?
That's right.
So, man, let's get into Killer Hogs, your competition team. I read online that it started in 2002, but then I was listening to a podcast you did with Meet Dave, and you said 2000. So I'm just wondering when you started it off.
So those early years are kind of blurry. we did a lot of good partying back then, but so we started Killer Hogs is right now. It's me and my brother and my wife Rochelle, and me and Waylon have been cooking under Killer Hogs for a long time. It started out Killer Hogs was a group of older gentlemen that were dads and friends of some buddies of ours, and we hung out with them at barbecue festivals. Our local town in South Haven had one called South Haven Spring Fest. And it was just a big barbecue event. There was a carnival. There was all kinds of fun things to do. And so I grew up going to that contest and hanging out. Well, those guys, they got tired of doing all the hard work and the cooking, and they asked us, and we were probably, late teenagers, high school, or, just out of high school. They asked us if we wanted to come and learn how to, cook some of the competition stuff. Basically, we'd be their labor. And so we all jumped on them because we usually got to slip a few beers in while we were doing that. So that's kind of how it all started. And eventually those guys decided to retire, and me and my brother asked if we could just, keep the Killer Hogs name and keep on cooking. And we did. We had a bunch of buddies that would cook with us, and it was like a big tailgate for a ball game or something like that. That's the way these contests were back then. And we were always just having a big party, and we weren't the best cooks because we still had so much to learn. But, those were the early days, and that's what made it so much fun to me. That's how I got hooked on it.
Yeah, right. And so were you into cooking and food before you got into that as a teenager? Like, were you taking some of those, in Australia, we'd call them home ec classes in high school, or like, were you learning a lot from your parents, or was it something that you just sort of got into because of the party aspect of it?
Well, in the South where I grew up, all of your big family events usually were barbecues. So we kind of took it for granted that we grew up around a barbecue grill or smoker. I can remember as an early child, my dad and uncle staying outside and cooking hogs overnight, and it being just a big ordeal that, it was a lot of fun, and it was family and it was friends. And that's what barbecue was to us. So that part came natural. When I got old enough to get my first job, I went to work for a fast food restaurant called Sonic. I don't know if you guys have Sonics, but it's like, it's like a burger, fry, shake type joint. And so I had some early experience working in kitchens and working around different types of foods. I worked at some pizza joints. I worked at a steakhouse, so I had some different experience going in, and that definitely helped me. I've never been culinary trained, but, watching my mom and my grandmas and my dad, and my uncles, and stuff like that, I kind of picked up and learned, I'm a big guy. I kind of know what tastes good. You could tell I don't shy away from anything. So I'd like to think I've had a pretty good palate going in, and could kind of, barbecue just kind of felt natural. So that's what made it, I think helped me excel in it a lot.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Sonic. My wife's American, and we went back to America a few years ago, and I said, okay, what do you want to do while we're here? And she said, I want to get a Sonic hot dog. And so we just found the nearest highway and just drove down the highway till we found a highway side Sonic, and went in and had basically build your own hot dogs in there. It was pretty cool. We don't have them in Australia.
With the jalapenos and the onions, all that good stuff on it.
Yeah, really good. Best hot dogs I ever had, actually. I'm not a huge hot dog guy, but that was good. They were good. So you mentioned that you got into competitions around sort of 20 years ago, which must have been not long after the competition scene sort of started. My understanding is it sort of started around the mid-90s. Tell us the story of your first competition.
Well, the first competition we had was actually the South Haven Spring Fest. And I remember, going, we were cooking in what was called the backyard division, or the amateur division. And we had to cook ribs. We had to cook pork butts. And, we had of course, back then we thought they were great. Looking back at it, I'm sure it was not that great. But we noticed all these teams were bringing out all their trophies and showcasing them, setting up tables. So we went and got all of our sports trophies and car show trophies, any kind of trophy that we had, we brought to the barbecue contest, and we set us up a big table. I want to say somebody brought a big keg of beer, and so it was a fun time. I don't even know if I was old enough to legally drink the beer then, but somehow it found its way in my cup, and we've had a lot of fun at that. I still remember that contest. It was so much fun. And that's what got me hooked on the competition side of it. We didn't get any kind of calls, or we didn't win any trophies that contest. But it wasn't long after that we finally did. We started cooking in all the ancillary contests, which that's anything other than their major barbecues. So most of these contests, they'll do side dishes, like it might be chili, it might be beans, it might be dessert, it might there's all different things. Well, one particular contest we cooked was red beans and rice. And so that was that was a big thing that I love to cook, red beans and rice. So I had another buddy that had a surefire recipe. And so we teamed up and entered red beans and rice, and we got first place in red beans and rice at this contest. And you would have thought we won grand champion of the whole thing, man. But we were even more hooked. And so as the years went on, we started getting calls in the bigger divisions, in the meat divisions. And once we thought we had it figured out, that was when we decided we needed to get more serious and cut back on the partying and really concentrate on our barbecue skills.
Yeah. Now, did anybody actually call you out on putting up those sporting trophies at the barbecue comp, or did they just sort of walk past and go, "Oh, wow, that's cool," and keep going?
They didn't back then. I guess they just thought, look at these, young punks. They're out here. They don't know what they're doing. They probably just laugh. But I don't think nobody would call us out back then. We were a little rowdy too, so we probably would have backed it up.
Fair enough. Yeah. And so how long was it really then until you got good?
I would say 2006 is when things really changed for us. We that was our first year to cook in Memphis in May, and they had the patio porkers division, which is the division that you have to cook right before you step up to be a professional in Memphis in May. And Memphis in May, if you don't know, is the World Pork Cooking Championship. Teams come from all over the world. Every just about every state in the United States has a representation, and everybody comes to Memphis for this one time every May. And it's still been going on. We've been cooking it every year since 2006. Well, we competed in the the patio porker division and we won first place. And so what that meant automatically, not only did we win about $4,500, we had to turn pro. And so from that point forward, we knew that if we cooked, we had to cook against all these pros. So we started doing our homework and we started traveling, and we would go cook ribs all over the Southeast. And that's what, that's what really changed us from being that big party type team just there to have a good time to really getting serious and trying to compete with the big guys. And so that next 2007 year, we just laid it all out, and we started getting calls and started winning. And then we started, doing other things. And we finally decided to thinking about 08 or 09 back in there to start doing KCBS contests, because they weren't that big in our part of the country. KCBS was growing still then. And then we decided that, the Memphis and May side was just pork, and we wanted to cook other categories too. So we kind of ventured over and started just primarily doing KCBS contests. And then we started cooking 25, 30 contests a year, really traveling and having a good time. And so we lost a lot of team members over the years because, as you start getting serious and all that, the fun time is you don't have the resources, and people don't want to hang out with you when you're trying to be all serious and not carry on. But me and Waylon stuck it out, and I met my wife, and she's jumped in there with us, and that's really been the key to our success.
Wow. That's a pretty cool story about how all the family got involved. And did you actually meet your wife at a barbecue competition?
I didn't meet her at a barbecue contest, but I met her talking about a barbecue contest. We were at a local pub, and we just had some mutual friends, and we were there planning the next Springfest event. It was, late winter, and we were needing a big grill to feed people, because back then we always, besides the contest, we cooked tons of food and just gave it away. Everybody that came in and hung out with us got to eat. And so we needed a big event type grill. And this young lady that was hanging out with us spoke up and said her father has one of these big grills, and she's sure that he would let us borrow it. So I was like, oh yeah, well, let's see. And so, yeah, sure enough, they brought that grill up there. We got to use it, and I fell in love immediately.
I dare say, mate, you're in a bar. There's a pretty girl. She likes barbecue. Her father likes barbecue. That's a done deal. That's
match made in smoke, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, when you turned pro around 2006, 2007, after you won that patio porker comp, when was your first big win after that against the big guys, as you were saying, and who were those big guys at the time?
It was probably in ribs at one of the local contests. I remember we were up in Kennett, Missouri. We made finals and we won first place in ribs. And that was back when Myron Mixon was cooking. Pete and Melissa from Memphis Barbecue was cooking, John David Wheeler, all the big names that you may have heard from the Memphis or, the Memphis and May area, were there. And that, those guys traveled those circuits, and that's kind of how, we took our lumps. We would go out and we would compete against those guys, and you didn't have any choice but to get better at what you were doing. So that was our primary focus. We weren't cooking whole hogs at the time. We were just concentrating on ribs. But that was the great thing about that style of cooking. You didn't have to cook all the categories to be in for the running for grand champion. All you had to do was pick. And so that was the big difference between KCBS and Memphis and May style cooking. Was in KCBS, you have to cook all four categories, and it's kind of cumulative. Your scores totaled up against all four. Well, in Memphis and May, just one single category, you can win the whole thing if you're that good with it. So, and that's kind of how we learned. As we got good in ribs, we added whole pork shoulder. And as we got good in whole pork shoulder and won enough money, we bought us a hog rig and we started cooking whole hogs. And so it took several years to do all that. It wasn't just an overnight success. There wasn't back then, the internet wasn't as big. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have people, giving away the secrets. There wasn't a lot of classes or anything you could take. You just kind of had to learn. And that's what we did. We went out and we put in the work and effort. And then as we, started developing, that's when I started trying to give away secrets and help people out, and people started hating that. But now, look, everybody does it. So.
Yeah. Hard work and determination certainly pays off. Now, throughout all that time, all those competitions, have you ever had a moment where you felt like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore? Like have you ever had a moment of like, I think I'm going to give up competition barbecue? Because I think all competitors, you push and you push and you push, and eventually everybody has that moment where they go, ugh.
I think I've definitely had that moment. I think it was about 9 weeks in on a 16-week run. It was like a little over a halfway. It was like, man, we're fools. Why are we doing this? We're killing ourselves week in and week out. We're not, every weekend's tied up. It's like we're just on a rinse repeat type cycle of everything we're doing, and you do get burnout. I've seen it happen to a lot of people. I mean, you think it's just cooking barbecue, that it's something you could do forever, but it's easy when it gets monotonous and you're doing the same thing over and over. It takes some of the fun out. And that's when I really turned to my YouTube channel and cooking different things and getting away from just cooking, competition style, that kept the interest going. So it still kept me interested in competition barbecue too, but it let me focus some of that energy other places too. And I think that was a big help for me, just because I love to cook.
Yeah, so you were able to find another opportunity for that creativity.
Exactly.
Nice. Now, I understand that you recently hosted your own competition for the very first time. It was in your hometown, I understand. Tell us about that.
That's right. It was. I live in Hernando now, which is just outside of Memphis, kind of a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee. It's actually in Mississippi, across the state line, but we're not far from Memphis. And they've had this contest, the Water Tower Festival, every fall. It's usually in September, for as long as I can remember. Probably all of my cooking career. It's always been like a local, I would call it a backyard style competition. There wasn't any payout. They gave some trophies out, but it was mainly for local bragging rights. And we used to cook in it. It was always a lot of fun. It was one that, your buddies came out, and it was just, who could cook the best ribs, who could cook the best steak, whatever. And since we opened up a business here in our hometown, that's where our retail shop is. The city, the Chamber of Commerce, asked us if we would, want to volunteer to help them kind of organize or run that contest to make it better. And we jumped on it. That's something that me and my wife have wanted to do for a long time, because being on the cook side and the organizing side is totally different. You don't, we have these ideas of how we would love to see a contest run from a cook standpoint, which they don't always translate to a financial way of how a city or an organization needs to do it. So we brought some of that knowledge over to help them, with the judging, with the, doing all the behind the scenes stuff that nobody wants to do, the organizing of it. And it was, I will say it was a lot more work than I ever anticipated, because, from the cook, we show up on the day of, and, you get your meat and you go to cooking, and then when you go pack up and go home when it's over. Well, it took us months to plan it. And then the day it was there, it was all hands on deck. And then you have to, do everything to get the scores tabulated and all that for the end of the day. And you want to make sure it runs right. And you want to make sure it's fair and square for everybody. But we were actually able to host the most teams that contest had ever had. It went off without a hitch. I mean, people loved it. We did a little survey after it and kind of was getting people's feedback, just so we know if we get the chance to help out next year, what we could do better, what teams liked. We actually got to pay out some money this year. It was $1,000 rib shootout. So we played first, second, third. I think it was 1,500 and 250 in ribs. And then we did steak and we did chicken hot wings there. And so we had payouts for those categories. So it was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't want to do it every weekend. I'd rather cook than organize.
Got a project you'd like to work on with the SHC team? Shoot Ben an email on ben@smokinghotconfessions.com and let's have a conversation.
Right, so as well as Killer Hogs, you've also got the massive brand How to BBQ Right. You've got your YouTube channel, you've got your podcast, so many different things going on there. Can you tell us about how you got into YouTube and How to BBQ Right?
Yeah, so the How to BBQ Right aspect really came from my wife. She was working back in internet marketing back when I met her first. And so she had some background. This was way before YouTube. And so we were doing, she always heard me hanging out, me and my brother hanging out with our buddies or on the phone, whenever we were talking to somebody, or chit chatting, it was always about barbecue. And so she said that we needed to start a website, and where we talked about barbecue. And I kind of blowed her off. I said, nobody's going to watch, who wants to see some guys talk about barbecue, whatever. Nobody's going to watch that, right? No, nobody wants to know that. Nobody's going to spend their time doing it. But I went along with her, and she said, we're just going to do a newsletter. That was the first thing. Well, the first thing was actually the website. We started killerhogs.com first, and it was a way for us to kind of share what was going on at contests, mainly pictures. We didn't really do recipes or anything like that, but it just showed behind the scenes, and there was no products for sale or anything. It was just like a way to put photos up and share it with people. And then she said, well, let's do, the newsletter. And I said, well, you want to do it under Killer Hogs? She said, we need a different name. And I said, well, I don't really know. I'm not good at coming up with names. How about How to BBQ Right? And she's like, well, it ain't the best name. And I said, well, we don't have anything else. Let's just go with it. See if anybody bought that domain. And so she said, no, How to BBQ Right is available. I said, all right, well, let's get that and start there. And she said, why How to BBQ Right? And I said, well, you don't want to barbecue wrong. So why not How to BBQ Right? And so that's where that started. And I did a newsletter, and I just knew nobody was going to subscribe to or read a newsletter. I mean, who does that? Especially some guy that's not I'm not a writer. I was never an English major in school or anything, but I started writing about the recipes and things that I was doing in the competition world. And people started subscribing. At first, I think there was 10 or 15. Then it built up to 100, and then 1,000. A few weeks go by, and we've got 1,000 people. I'm like, wow, 1,000 people are subscribed to this newsletter and reading it, because it tells you how many open it, and and if they read it or not. So we realized there was something there. And then we got to working with the company. It was one of our Memphis MA sponsors that wanted us to capture some video, and so they could share it on their website. And so we was like, sure, no problem. And so they're going to send us this little camera. It was called a flip cam. And, it recorded it on it, and you could stick it in a USB, and you could email it to them. Well, we took it to the contest, and we started recording stuff. Well, back then, those files were so huge, there was no way to email them. There wasn't Dropbox or anything like that. So we said, what are we going to do? We're going to mail them this whole camera, then they're going to have to get it back. And so my wife said, let me look into it. And so at her work, they'd been doing some video stuff. And she said, there's this thing called YouTube, and it's a way for you to put videos up there, and then we can just grab the link and share it with them, and they can pull it from there and share it on their end. And so I was like, well, that'll work fantastic. It was free. There wasn't any charge for YouTube or anything. And so we made us a little How to BBQ Right YouTube channel, and we started putting that footage we were sharing on there with them. And then while we were doing that, instead of writing newsletters, she said, well, you just want to record, you doing some stuff like a recipe and put on there, and we can share it in our newsletter that we're still doing, but we can have this video too. And I was like, sure, I've never been in front of a camera. I didn't have any training. She didn't have any training recording anything, but we did it. And it was raw, man. We were doing it in our kitchen. We didn't edit most of it. It was just unfiltered, and we learned as we went. And that's it took us, that was back, I guess, 11, 12 years ago. I think we hit 1 million on YouTube a year or so ago, and it took us like 10 years to do it. So it's hard to put the exact date on it, but I think it was like 2010, something like that, if I had to say, when we first started YouTube. And so it's, our big thing on YouTube was we never stopped. Once we started making videos, we tried to be consistent, and we tried to always put something out, no matter if people watched it, no matter if I got bad comments, it didn't matter. It was eyeballs looking at it. So.
Yeah, there's always someone out there trying to put bad comments on things. It's just a cruel part of the world, I'm afraid. So how hard was it when you did get started? I mean, 2010 technology wasn't great. There wasn't wireless microphones. How hard was it to sort of start to make regular weekly video content?
Oh, it was real hard. We didn't have lights. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have mics. We had the little flip video. We used that some, and then I think we graduated to like a little Sony Handycam that had a microphone built on it. But then there wasn't, we didn't have easy way to edit it. Like now we use MacBooks, and they've got, Final Cut or Adobe Premiere. You've got these different programs that make it all easy. Well, back then we had one called Sony Vegas Studios, and it was the clunkiest, most, you needed like an AV degree or some kind of special degree to run this program. But my wife figured out, how to do some basic editing, basically cutting and, just clipping stuff. And that was about all we did. And we tried to lengthen our video. We realized quick in YouTube that the videos that were between, 10, 15 minutes kind of did the best. People didn't really have much of an attention span over that 15-minute threshold on YouTube. So we tried to keep our video content, in that time frame. We tried to always have the same kind of angles. We didn't try anything fancy. We did the best we could with the lighting we had indoor and outdoor. And we just, we were kind of balling on a budget, we didn't really have a budget. We used whatever we could. Then the iPhones came out and the technology started getting really good on the iPhone cameras. And so we a lot of it we did with our iPhones. And then now, I think we graduated up to using DSLR cameras and lapel mics, and we use lights now, and we use double camera angles. And so it's all kind of been a learning process, learn as we go. And that's kind of where we've taken it to now. And we've done the same thing with our podcast. We didn't know anything about podcasting equipment other than we went to the MBBQA and we heard these guys talking about doing barbecue podcast. And we said, well, we can learn how to do that. So that's how we started that too.
Yeah. And you're certainly crushing it with the podcast as well. Anytime you type in barbecue podcast, there it is. You're right at the top of the list on the Google search rankings.
I think the big thing with the podcast we learned was it was just like our YouTube videos. You have to be consistent. There's a certain amount of people they get used to you putting out content and they'll keep coming back and they'll tell people about it. And so that's the way we've kind of looked at our podcast too. It's a great way for me and Rochelle to catch up at the end of the week, kind of come up for air and just talk and be ourselves about the things we've done. And so that's really what the How to BBQ Right podcast is. We talk about the recipes. We talk about the contest. We have guests on sometimes, but mainly it's just us hanging out and having a good time, talking about what's going on in our lives. And so it's been great therapy for us. We just let everybody listen to it.
It's quality time for you and your wife to bond and connect over barbecue.
That's right. Who wouldn't want to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now you mentioned that it took about 10 years for you to hit 1 million subscribers. You're currently sitting at about 1.3. How long was it until you started monetizing? Like when you hit that threshold on YouTube for monetizing?
It took us a long time. Our growth was slow because we didn't do the traditional way where people, place ads and do all that kind of stuff, just because we didn't have the money we didn't have a budget for that. So we let it grow organically. I remember it took several years before we ever got, the monetizing thing wasn't that hard back then. I think you just had to have like 1,000 subscribers and you had to have so many minutes back then. And so we reached that threshold probably within the first year, but to get it to that first 100,000, I remember it took like 4 or 5 years. And then after that, it kind of grew exponentially. Like, the next year it would be 200,000 and then it would go to 400,000 and then it was 8. So we knew we were on track to hit that million. But back when we first started, I told Rochelle, there's not 1 million people that would watch a barbecue YouTube channel. I don't even know how we can, I remember getting that first play button, the silver button. And I thought that was the most awesome thing. And that was as high as we could ever get. And so, it was like now we've got the gold button and we started another channel where we're fixing to be silver level on it already. It seems like right now people consume media more than they did like on handheld devices and short form content. So you see the growth on channels now way faster than you did back in the day. There's guys that can throw a channel up now and, they're getting 100,000, just seems like overnight, and they're getting to the million range, in 2 years. It was like, that was hard to do back when we first started. And it's still it's still growing pretty steady now. You can see like just in a little over a year, it's 325 on ours. So we'll probably hit that 2 million range here in another year and a half or so, if it keeps trajecting like it is.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff, isn't it? So what's after the gold play button? Does it go to platinum?
It does. I think you have to get 10 million there's a diamond, and I think there's a diamond and a platinum or something. I don't look at those too close, as I said, that's never going to happen. I like to say that, then my wife can say, "See, I told you so." So maybe one day, but
Yeah. And so how long was it then until you could quit the day job?
Well, I quit. I say I retired or quit my real job in 2010, right when I started YouTube.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't by choice. I was working in the architecture field, commercial architecture, and in 2008, I don't know if you guys had the turn down that we did, but we really had like a recession in the States. And so I was working with one firm, and I hadn't been there very long, just a couple of years, and they did a layoff, and so I got laid off, and then I went to work for another firm in the Memphis area, and they lasted till about 2010. And their business kind of ran out. Commercial construction still hadn't bounced back. And so I had a little bit of money saved up, got a decent severance package. And that was right when, we still had our newsletter going, and I'd just come out with my The BBQ Rub and was trying to sell it on our website. And I told Rochelle, I was like, look, we've got a little bit of money. We can make it for like 9 months with the money we had in the bank, paying all our bills, groceries, every car notes, all that stuff. Let's do what we can and bust our tails for these 9 months and see if we can get this off the ground and, make a go of it. And so we did. And I haven't went back to a real job yet. Neither is she. She still had a real job for a little while during that, but she eventually, she had to, we got forced to have to do it because it was just me and her. All the content we were producing and putting out, the contest we were cooking, and then all of the packing and shipping and selling the product that we did, it was just me and her out of our garage. And so it was like 24 hours, 7 days a week. We were humping.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, you got to kind of bust your butts a bit when that sort of thing happens. And I actually got into barbecue in a similar way. I was made redundant from my job, and I found myself at home with a 1-year-old baby, and I went, well, you know what? I'm going to learn how to cook everything outside because I'm not washing up saucepans and pans and that every night for dinner. So that's how I got into it. Okay, now you mentioned that you and your wife were doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A lot of people think that when it comes to YouTube, it's as easy as just filming and uploading. So what else is involved in the process of having a YouTube channel?
Well, the big part of it, I guess, the planning of it is the main thing to me. I have to, so, we try to plan out our recipes way in advance of what we're going to do. I love to test them 2 or 3 times before I put something out there. It's very rare that I like to cook one, film it, and nothing, it all goes right. I can put it up. But it also, the cooking part's easy. I got the easiest job. Rochelle has the hardest job that we do because the editing of it is really, that's what makes it viewable. That's what makes people want to watch it. When you got your audio right and you got the lights right and you got the editing, the clips are right, and then it flows. It seems like something that's been produced a little bit. That's easier for someone to sit there and give 10 minutes to. And so for her, like if it takes us 6 to 8 hours of filming, over the course of a cook, it might take her 2.5 days to sit down and get it all edited and put back together. So our process usually starts on a Monday. Monday's usually film day. And then we've usually edit Tuesday and Wednesday and then try to release on Thursday if all goes right. And that's, still juggling running our business and doing all that stuff. So her finding time to do all that. Recently we've been fortunate enough to be able to hire some help a little bit. So we've got Tyler, who I guess have been in communications with. He kind of runs our social now, but he's learning how to edit our videos and help us with a lot of that. And then we've hired some interns too. So it's, we figured out that we can't do it all. And it's, and there's so much more goes into it than just filming you cook something and then loading it to YouTube. That's what, I guess a lot of people have that preconception that oh man, you're just cooking and filming and putting it up there, but it's a lot more than that.
Yeah. Some of the conservative estimates I've heard is that it's about 1 hour of editing for each minute of footage of final footage.
I would say that's, real close to being accurate.
Yeah, so about a 10-minute video is about 10 hours of editing work.
Yeah. It depends on how good you are. Like, I mean, I guess some people could knock it out, but then, we're probably on the slower end. I don't know. I can't speak. Rochelle's bad to the bone. She's got it down now. You give her some quiet time and a headset, and she goes to it. So
yeah. Now, I bit of a curious question. Have you ever had a disastrous video? Like you've spent all day shooting, you go back and you look at the footage and you go, oh, I can't use that.
I had one involving Foster's beer.
Really?
Doing beer can turkey. And I didn't get to release the video. I never went back and did it. Man, I had these beautiful turkeys I was doing. It was around Thanksgiving time here in the States. And, they were golden. The seasoning was perfect on the outside. I had them sitting on top of the big Foster's oil can, the big beer can. They was going to do the, and then the last 30 minutes, I don't know if I put some bad wood in the grill and didn't realize it or what happened, but these turkeys turned jet black. I'm talking black as the curtain behind you. And I was like, we'd spent, 6 hours on this film and cook and everything going right. There was no salvaging it. So we had to scrap that one. And I've had a couple like that. Another one comes to mind was a venison meatloaf, and it just didn't turn out. It looked like dog food. And I was like, I can't, you try to go through this and make things, turn out the best they can. And I'd done the recipe before and it did all right, but something that day just didn't happen. And it was like, once we go back, she lets me watch it. I was like, you can't put this out there. I look like a fool. It's disgusting. So we watch everything, there's been some hiccups along the way, but there's been more success stories than heartache, I guess.
And what do you do in that situation? Do you like jump in the truck and run straight back down to HEB and grab something else and come home and film that?
At that point, we're probably cursing each other. Had enough. No, we didn't. We didn't do anything else. That was scrapped it. We're not releasing this week. We break our rule. Don't put one out. But it happens like that sometimes. It's not always, it's not always roses. There's ups and downs.
And every rose has its thorn too, as they say. So how many cooking videos have you put out to date, and how do you keep finding new ideas and new inspiration?
Man, I don't know. I would say upwards in the 300s, maybe. It probably says on my YouTube. I really don't. I can grab my phone. Let me just. That's a good curiosity. Has me. If we click on YouTube and we search Malcom Reed,
I counted 200 on your YouTube channel yesterday, but I figured that there was probably more.
Yeah, it says 536 videos. Now, I don't know how many of those include some podcast or, they're probably not all recipes, but that's how many uploads YouTube gives us credit for, 536. The inspiration for them, I keep a running spreadsheet of ideas and recipes that I want to develop. So I can remember at being back as far as a child, my grandmothers and my mother having cookbooks, and I've always been fascinated by recipes and cookbooks. A lot of these were like the church lady cookbooks that, you would see, little community cookbooks, things like that. They always had interesting recipes in them. And so I would find myself going through those cookbooks and, and just seeing stuff that sounded cool. So as an adult, when I started, cooking and doing stuff in the kitchen and on the grills and smokers, I still, have a love for cookbooks. If something new comes out, I usually buy that cookbook and I go through it. So I get inspiration from those, seeing what other guys have done. So, taking some of the stuff and, turning it into my own, putting my spin on it, or seeing if it will work with a different protein, or just running ideas. And so with that going on in YouTube and barbecue forums and all the stuff, there's never like a lack of inspiration now. I don't think so. As long as you take the time and kind of make a mental note or jot it down some kind of way, you can go back to that and develop recipes from it. So that's what I've had a lot of success with, keeping myself on track by having a list.
Yeah, that's interesting. The key is so often organization, isn't it? There's people out there that just hate being organized and they just sort of fizzle out. And it's the ones that are like, hey, I've got a spreadsheet. They're the ones that sort of seem to be able to keep going. So what advice would you have for someone starting out a YouTube barbecue cooking channel now in 2021?
The best advice is jump in and get started. Don't worry about what somebody else is going to think about the content you're putting out. Do it because you like it. You don't have to be a professional. You can learn as you go. The great thing about YouTube is it's really niche. You're gonna find there's a lot of people interested in the same things you're interested in that you may never have known. They could be on different continents and different places in the world. But if you don't start, you'll never find out. And once you start, I say just get on a routine schedule. It doesn't have to be weekly. If you could do bi-weekly, you could do monthly, but you want to get on a regular schedule of putting out content that gets you in the habit of going through the drill, coming up with your recipe, figuring out your film day, giving you time to edit it, and figuring out what day you're going to load it up. All the other stuff, the technical stuff that comes with it, using the right keywords and doing all the tagging and all that stuff, that's all stuff you can learn. Nobody knows all that from the get-go when they're first starting. But there's great tutorial videos. YouTube does a lot with like their YouTube University, where you can, when you sign up, you can go watch videos on that and see what people suggest. But there's a ton of, to me, YouTube is probably one of the great resources we have now as humans on this planet. If you can't find it on YouTube, something's wrong. You need to make it. You need to make a video on it, because more than likely, someone's done it, So there's the best thing, I think, is just have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Don't get your feelings hurt if you don't get subscribers right away, because you gotta crawl before you walk. It's just like anything. So I think if you have a passion for it and you want to take the time to do it, man, jump right in and get started.
Alrighty, there you have it, family. That was, of course, the one and only Malcom Reed. How cool was that? And what an opportunity to have Malcom here on the show with us. Now, that is about all the time we do have for today. So until next time, take care of each other and keep on queuing.
Thanks for listening to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. Head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com for recipes, tips, and Ben's own confessions.